Yeah, push on that pedal. I need another dozer out there.
Okay.
It hit me last night.
How's your helmet?
Hot, man. Get working on it.
Holiday season.
Let's see that.
Hi, you passed me too.
I was
don't see
covering. I
anyone.
couldn't really say
Here, it's only got like 10% battery.
They're just being dangerous on a bicycle. Almost getting hit.
New, and I keep touching the screen.
Oh, not right.
And it's not a touch screen.
It
No,
was funny too
Davis,
because my
it's not a touch
car
screen.
was in the back of a friend's
It's
golf
not
cart,
working.
and I was like, we had to do putty breaks, so we went back to the house and like her witch hats in the street, and then we get to
Time to go to work.
house, and Pat has her broom. My sister like, it's okay, I'm just cleaning up behind her.
Everybody ready? Good evening. It is 6 o'clock, November 1st, and this is the regularly scheduled council workshop for November. Mary Ann, would you please call the roll?
Mayor D'Ambra,
Here?
Vice Mayor Stone,
Here.
Councilmember Brandon,
Here.
Councilmember Prince,
Here.
Councilmember Young.
Here.
Okay. Can I have a motion to go forward with this evening's agenda, please?
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, first item up is consideration of fleet replacement on the fire trucks. Chief Troop?
And I'll just lead him off while he's coming up, but, you know, this item, when I got here, we obviously were in a financial situation for our trucks. This item's up for discussion. I know meeting with the reps, you know, the lead time for these trucks are, I think it was in the report, 16 to 20 months. There is some escalation coming. There's typically every year, I think, and Chief Troop can talk on this, a 3% escalation or 2%. This year, you know, we're looking at a lot more. So with a 16 to 20 month lead time, it's up for discussion about making the obligation, and we'll do a budget adjustment and do a PO for these items, for these trucks. We still won't get them for 16 to 20 months. We won't have to make a payment until we get those. And so, you know, it's a possibility with, over the period of time of saving nearly $200,000 with making this obligation or this payment now, or not the payment, making this, getting a purchase order so we can commit to doing these trucks now. You know, originally the 2014 truck was the one that has been discussed several times. It was supposed to be replaced in 2014. So in our capital improvement plan in 24 and in 25, we had successive trucks. I wanted to bring it forward as going ahead and obligating for both of them because of the lead time. I think Chief Troop has a presentation and can probably talk a little bit more about it. We can go into some of the financial, where we are financially and how this fits in our, you know, our long-term planning, if that's the direction you guys want to go. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Troop and we can have further discussion.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, Mr. Manager, Village Attorney, and Village Clerk. So what you have before you is a proposal to consider the purchase of a 2022 Sutphen Custom Pumper for $735,830 and a 2022 Sutphen Custom Aerial Model SL75 for $1,129,758. Total of both apparatus would be $1,865,588. The vehicles would replace the oldest vehicles in our fleet. The 1994 Sutphen Aerial apparatus, which is original pretty much to this department. On a side note, I did the final inspection on that truck in 1994, so I'll be sad to see it go. The other truck we're replacing is a 2003 Sutphen Pumper. The vehicles are designed by a committee that we formed 6 to 8 months ago, and they're designed, you know, ideal for crew familiarity, continuity with current equipment and future equipment. The replacement, the Quint, the 75-foot Quint, is specifically designed to meet the needs of our area, based on wheelbase and the ability to put a stick in the air real quickly on strip malls and large residential houses. PowerPoint slide, if we can go to the very first slide there. Okay, this is our fire rescue fleet replacement schedule. For the most part, you're going to see we've been pretty consistent over the years. The truck that was purchased in '94, the 100-foot aerial platform that we currently operate, was expected to be 20 years and no more than 25. So anywhere between 2014 and 2019, that vehicle should have been replaced. The engine 285 that you see there, the other truck that we're looking to replace, is a 2003 Sutphen. It's a 1,500 gallon per minute pumper. It's got a 1,000-gallon tank. That's pretty standard in our fleet. It was expected to do 10 years of frontline service and 10 years of reserve service. That's also standard. If I follow the history of the department, pretty much every 10 years we replace an engine. The 2025, or excuse me, the Rescue 285 is a 2010 wheel coach. This is one of our rescue trucks, one of our ambulances. It's on a Freightliner chassis. Because we've gone to bigger chassis, these rescue trucks are now expected to last 15 years, with 7.5 being considered frontline, 7.5 being considered reserve. Engine 85, our newest engine, is a 2013 Sutphen with a 1,500 gallon tank, or 1,500 gallon per minute pump and a 1,000 gallon tank. In other words, identical to the other trucks, both the one that we're trying to replace and the one we're trying to replace it with. Again, 10 years frontline, 10 years reserve, and that's pretty much how those go. That truck still has 10 years of life left as a reserve apparatus. It would need to be replaced in 2033. Our newest truck that we just purchased is a 2021 Horton ambulance on an international chassis, again, a heavy-duty chassis. Also a 15-year life expectancy with 7.5 frontline, 7.5 reserve. Life expectancy, or expected to be replaced by 2035. Next slide, please. Maintenance. Okay, as many of you know, we do have a maintenance contract with Palm Beach County through our automatic aid. So what I try to show you here is in-service times and the number of work orders that we're receiving on these trucks so that you can see we're doing our best to, one, keep them in service, and also the difficulty we have in maintaining them in service. So truck 85 is in service about 76% of the time. Engine 85, actually our newest engine, has had a run of bad luck in the last 2 years and has only been available to us 87% of the time. Engine 285 shows 98%, which is actually pretty good for an older truck, but it is also showing 96 work orders, which is a considerable amount of work orders. And I'm going to get more into that here in a second. Our Rescue 85 or 2020 Horton, of course, is nearly at 100%, and it's completely under warranty right now. Rescue 285 is the 2010 wheel coach, and you see we're already running into some issues with that. At 89% of the time, it is in service. Now, if I can go back, just something that happened real recently, if I can give you a little bit of what we're up against. We went through a period from roughly the middle of September, middle to end of September, say around the 20th, where engine 85 was out of service. Had a problem with the DEF fluid, what they call a doser, and it had a problem with a DEF fluid pump. Now, that's not real important that you know that, other than the fact that we just couldn't get it all fixed. Parts are difficult to get right now. Everything was a problem. So that truck was out of service for 5-6 weeks. Actually, I take it back. It's still out of service. We're still waiting on repairs on that one. At the same time that was out of service, truck 85 was down. So both truck 85 and engine 85 were both out of service simultaneously, which left us with engine 285, a 19-year-old vehicle, is what we're relying on to get our firefighters to emergency scenes, where only a large fire truck will do. And I think that's another important difference here as compared to, say, a rescue truck. You could borrow a rescue truck if you absolutely had to have one. It'd be red, it'd probably say Palm Beach County on it, but a rescue truck is a rescue truck. I put my equipment on it, we're good to go. When you're talking about engines and trucks, you have to know the trucks. They come with specific equipment with, on the aerial device, they come with specific pump operations. It's important that our guys understand and are familiar with our equipment, because when we get the call for fires or hazardous conditions, every second really does count. So that's important. Next slide, please. 20-year apparatus view. So we threw up the FY 2014 through 2019 to show you that somewhere in there, that's where the truck should have been replaced. That's the aerial. That's the 100-foot ladder truck that we currently operate. Depending on which year you select, the price for that replacement would have been somewhere between $750,000 and $900,000. Currently, I'm asking for $1.129, $758. And I'm also asking for the engine there at $735,830. So that's the 1.865 million. But we won't have to replace another large apparatus until 2033. You will essentially reset the table. And I want to make this part really clear. The engines are really in line. 2023, we should be replacing an engine. The issue has been that we did not replace the ladder truck. That's really the true issue here. That's why we're having a very serious discussion tonight about spending all this money, is we should have replaced the ladder truck much earlier. I wouldn't be here asking for 2 trucks, I'd be here asking for 1. Now I'm here asking for 2 because that's what we need.
Let me ask you a question.
Okay?
What, will you go sell the 2 trucks that you're replacing?
We would probably sell the 2 trucks replaced. That's been past practice. I can tell you on the really old ladder truck, I believe it would be sold for parts at best. I don't believe there'd be a buyer for the truck. And part of that gets back into just the maintenance of it. It's it'll be 30 years old probably by the time we were to get another truck in here. The parts, just to keep it running, and many times they're not on the shelf anymore. This is a custom-built truck. At a certain point in time, you just do not have the replacement parts. So it will be difficult to sell those. I'm not saying we won't be able to, I'm saying it'll be difficult.
I would think that there would be some of the real small little municipalities somewhere that, you know, that does, you know, real small, smaller than obviously what we are, that might have a need for something. I mean, I was thinking you could get some money, $50,000-$75,000 out of.
Yeah, I quite honestly don't have that figure. That's something I can ask the manufacturer for, what they've been seeing on resale on that. Again, it is something we do traditionally do, is sell the trucks.
Right. Okay.
The engine as well, we would not be hanging on to these.
Right.
So,
How do you determine your downtime when you're configuring that percentage? What's that based off
So
of?
that's simply based on when the work order went in and when the truck was put back in service. So it's simply those 2 dates.
Excuse me. Okay.
Okay. I think we go on to the next slide. Okay, so in closing, why are we here tonight? Reliability. You know, our fleet is aging. Our vehicle downtime and reliability have become an ongoing issue. And again, that's compounded by the fact that we, in some cases, just can't get the parts to replace the broken parts on these trucks. The build time. I recently received memos from both of our manufacturers, both on the rescues and on the engines and on the aerials, talking about the build time. They're now looking at 16 to 22 months. They expect that it could potentially become a little bit longer than that. They're just not sure. That's in large part due to the supply chain issues that they're having. Interest rates. Interest rates are currently low, and I'll get into that more in a minute. Inflation. The manager briefly mentioned inflation. Depending on the manufacturer, last year, all apparatus manufacturers went up somewhere between 6 and 8% in August. They traditionally have an increase in January. The manufacturer that we're talking to, Sutphen, who's built all of our trucks, is looking at somewhere between 3 to 5% in January. And he's already telling me that there may be another increase in the summer to fall again next year. He just doesn't know. And I think the bottom line here on the thing is, when seconds count, there's nothing more important than reliability. And I think if I could stress one thing to council, is that it's starting to feel like we have some trucks that are just simply unreliable. They're hard to keep on the road. And I certainly don't want to be in a situation where we just don't have anything to put on the road. And I think that's important here. Financing. And there's no slide for this. I was able to talk with Hugh in finance. We did some preliminary work on a lease purchase option, and we assumed a 10-year lease at 2.5%. And that would result in a yearly payment of $214,847.90. We also did a run on basically a lease purchase option at 3%. That would result in a payment of $220,237.38. Currently, we're somewhere around 1.75 to 2%, depending on who you ask on that. And that concludes my presentation. I will take questions.
Teresa, would you like to, you've already asked a couple, I don't know.
I think I've already asked my questions.
Lori?
I'm not against it, but just why a ladder truck in particular?
Why the ladder truck? Well, there are a lot of reasons for the ladder truck. I'm sure most of you know I'm going to talk to you about ISO. We're currently an ISO rated 2 department without a ladder truck, which we will be without one I'm convinced we will be without one if we don't replace this one shortly. We will likely drop at least from a 2 to a 3. And that's per a memo I have from ISO, because we asked that question. Additionally, we do have high rises here. We have tall buildings. We have large residential structures. We have commercial buildings. The use of especially this truck, the one we're looking at, and it's important to note, this is a 75-foot quint, slightly different than the truck you're used to seeing. It's more maneuverable in a town the size of Tequesta. It's a stick, which means it's just a ladder. There's no bucket on the end. So as far as getting guys to the roof quickly, we can do that. As far as putting up a large elevated stream to fight big fires, we can do that. It's a very, very functional truck for what we do, and made so in part by the wheelbase. The wheelbase is closer to that of an engine. It's a single axle truck instead of a double axle like you're currently used to seeing. Because it's a single axle and it's a stick and it's 75 foot, not 100 foot, it does save us some money. A full 100-foot aerial platform would cost you, and this is an estimate, but I'd say in the neighborhood of $1.4 million. This one's coming in less than that. So we did our best to try to fit our needs with some considerations to cost. So I hope that answers
It does. I just
the
want to make
question.
sure we're investing in something we need, we can use, other than just one purpose.
Right.
Again, it's not that I'm against it, I just wanted to put on the record why we'd be looking at a ladder truck. I don't really have any other questions, other than I appreciate you putting the different trucks in time order and of their wear and tear, so that we can consistently look at it from a capital plan of what we need to look at in the future, much like we are doing everything else. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Molly?
Yep, I have a couple of questions. I know your presentation had the number of work orders per truck, but what would be the savings in maintenance?
Okay, so with our maintenance contract with Palm Beach County, and this is part of our automatic aid agreement, we have $70,000 that are covered up front. So there's no cost up to $70,000 to the village of Tequesta. It's just part of the contract. We have
When's
over.
that contract coming up?
Yeah, the contract is coming up. The contract is coming up next year. So we expect to be talking to Palm Beach County here shortly. So I guess there is always options with that. The cost over the last 3, and again, I'm going to estimate, we've been between the low 70s in total expenditure, so slightly over the 70,000, all the way is up to 95, 96,000, I think, maybe my first year as the chief here. And I can tell you, we probably would have been a little higher last year, except for the problem with the 2 trucks. When the 2 trucks both went down simultaneously, they were both out of service. In the case of the ladder truck, they simply couldn't, they didn't have the part. They literally couldn't get the part. They had to manufacture part of this, okay? With the engine, again, it was a supply and demand thing. There were no parts on the shelves that had to be back ordered. Everything had to wait. So it was about waiting. Had that not occurred, the bills for those 2 trucks would have rolled into September, not October and November. In addition to that, I had to hold repairs on engine 285 back just to keep the truck in service. So I literally was running a truck that I knew needed repairs, even though it needed the repairs, so that we would have experienced that bill as well. And I don't have the exact number as to how much that would have put us over on that account last year, but I can get it for you if you'd like it. My point is, we're somewhere between 70 and say 95,000 over the last 3 years on maintenance costs.
Okay. And then insurance-wise, I'm sure we have to insure those things. So what does that do to insurance costs with the new trucks? Would our insurance costs go down or would they go up?
That's a very good question, and I'm positive I do not have that answer for you tonight. I'll have to get that to you.
Okay, and my last question is training costs. Does that, I don't know the supplier you guys get it from, if they provide training, or where does the training come from? Is that accounted for?
Okay, the training is not accounted for in any of these numbers. That would be a different line item in our budget. Sutphen will provide initial training on all they always do on their apparatus, so we'll get 3 or 4 days of training from the manufacturer. That will not be enough, I can tell you that right now. In-house, we will do training here in-house. So, for example, with the aerial, the ladder truck that we're talking about here, I would work with my training officer. We would select buildings of various shapes and sizes to deploy the truck to. We'd work with property owners to get the right time. We get all of our crews through things, through that. We do basic driving courses. So there's a lot that we can do in-house. Outside of that, I can work with Palm Beach County Fire Rescue and Palm Beach Gardens and get the truck to the training sites. Our relationship with both gardens and their training facility is very good. We recently had a training drill in September. There is another one scheduled. And I'll hopefully tell you more about that at the council meeting, because I'm excited about that one. But we would work with our partners to get as much training as we can. Would you expect to see an impact in personnel training in that specific line item for this? Yes, I would expect to see a little bit of an impact there, but we're not talking about 50,000 here. We're talking about 5,000, 10,000 difference on that for the 1 year for the setup. And that is my best guess.
Okay, well, I think it's very apparent the trucks are outdated and need replaced, but if you wouldn't mind following up with some of the questions I have.
Yeah, insurance, and you want training costs.
No, maintenance you answered, so mostly just insurance and training, yeah. I think you kind of answered training.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm just curious on more trends on the cost for maintenance. So if you can you break it out by equipment?
By individual truck?
Yeah.
Yes, I can do that.
Look, I'm not sure how many years, I know it's been a big project on it, but I think
Per,
just having
you want it per year, per truck?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go
Have
back.
that perspective of seeing how one's greater than the other.
Yeah,
per
and
project.
it varies. You've seen on the one slide, oddly, our newest engine's been down more than you would expect. Some of that was on the DEF fluid pumps and the doser, which don't exist on the older trucks. So we're seeing, quite frankly, problems for the first time that we've never seen before. So that's something we'll have to watch, and that did kind of throw those numbers out of whack. Typically, Engine 85 is very reliable. It's just that it took a pretty big hit this year. And I think that's probably skewed those percentages a little bit.
So help me understand about ISO.
Yes.
And the organization behind that. Who is that? And
Okay, so ISO basically rates all fire departments, and this is the basis for your insurance. Specifically, it really affects commercial properties much more than residential properties, but it does affect everybody. So the higher our rating, if we're, there's a 1 to 10 classes, there's 10 classes, 1 to 10, with 1 being the highest. We're currently a 2. When I started, I think we were a 4. We gradually moved up to a 3, and then this last time, we managed to get to a 2. And they look at all things: number of vehicles, number of personnel, training hours, water. Matt's team, Matt's here. We have a tremendous water system. Without it, we wouldn't be anywhere near 2. They look at communications. They do look at our automatic aid and mutual aid agreements. They look at how often we train with those other departments. So it's an all-encompassing view of what the fire department is capable of doing. So any, backwards track on trucks or anything would affect the ISO rating.
would they be able to tell us what that increase in commercial insurance would be going from a 2 to 3?
I would have to ask them that specific question. I honestly don't know if they can tell you. I mean, everybody's geographical area is going to be different. They might have that. I can check.
Would that be a function of ISO, or would that be a function of the individual insurance companies? Because the international standards organization.
Yeah, that's a good point, Mr. Mayor. It's possible that each insurance company has their own way of calibrating the rating. I honestly don't. I'm not an insurance expert. I'm good if your building's on fire, but I don't know what it's insured for.
At any event, it's going to be a cost to the residents, right?
Yes.
Whether they pay for the truck or they pay for the insurance.
Sure.
Right. So
I got-
which direction we're going, I'm just curious what it is.
I always lean towards public safety, so there's an advantage to having a ladder truck that can reach in the air, put a master stream up, get people to the roof, properly be able to vent buildings, and in fact reach residents that are above the height of the ground ladders. So
When was the last time we used our ladder truck?
Listen,
And
we
it's
haven't,
all-
we haven't used a ladder truck that much. I think most people here in the room probably are aware of that. It would be a policy change or a protocol change on our end, but what I'd like to see us do is use the truck more. And actually, quite honestly, because of some of the moves that we've made together, specifically in the area of bunker gear, all of our firefighters now have 2 sets of bunker gear. I'm not far from being able to have 2 sets of bailout bags for everybody. It's a small reach. It's within the normal budget for me to do it, excuse me, simultaneously with the delivery of the truck. So it would be my proposal here that when we go to this truck, we use both trucks. We put the right truck on the right scene. I think everybody would agree that the ladder with a master stream device that's capable of being 60, 70 feet in the air is good on commercial buildings. It's good on high rises. I think everybody would probably agree that having an engine show up at your house with 500 extra gallons of water would make more sense too. So my point is, with 2 full sets of gear, I can cross-staff the 2 trucks. I can put gear on both trucks. There's no delay. In other words, the tones drop, the guys go get in the appropriate truck and take it to the appropriate call. Now, I did do a little study on that too. If this protocol had been in place, we would have responded to somewhere between 400 and 450 runs over the last 3 years with the aerial device. So it would get used. And that's just on calls where it requires either an engine or a ladder truck. If we're out doing fire inspections, obviously, and we happen to be in the ladder truck, we would go to the call in that truck. We're not talking about parading around town with 2 trucks.
So now with your current firehouse, you have 2 bays?
It's 3 bays, rescues in the first bay, engines in the second, aerials in the third.
One other question, I'm sure it's got a warranty on it, and with that being said, we should be able to save a significant amount of the maintenance cost that, it's been costing us around, on an average, probably $8,000 a month. On average, that was for all of the trucks, so, I believe. So, I mean, the savings for the 2 that you're replacing is gonna be a significant savings, and that should be moving forward for several years. I would think that the maintenance cost would be virtually nothing. What is the warranty on it?
Okay, so the warranty, again, I'm gonna have to dig deeper into that. The cost savings, though, if the vehicles are in fact warranted, for the entire 10 years, for example, remember, we still have the automatic aid agreement with the $70,000 that the county is already putting up. So unless that changes, there's really no savings.
Well, why would we have to pay them that amount when we don't have that old of a truck that's under warranty?
Well, it's not us paying them, it's what's in the contract currently.
We appreciate making
We
it
have, we have.
Well, I know, I mean, but we are paying it, it's just in the contract, but I would think that the contract should have a clause in it that if you've got a truck that's under warranty, then we should get a deduction for that warranty truck that's not gonna have any maintenance cost to it during the warranty period.
I understand what you're saying. All I can do is tell you what's currently in the contract. I mean, that's something we could possibly discuss with Palm Beach County as we renegotiate a contract.
One of the things that, sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
One of the things that we're looking at, because that agreement, it was originally a 10-year agreement. One of the things we're looking at is the capital replacement cost with that agreement, structuring that, obviously to cover our costs equal to what our citizens are paying with that service, plus putting that capital cost in there. So, what that trade-off is for the maintenance cost, maybe there is some. So maybe instead of them giving us $208,000 plus $70,000, maybe they're giving us $230,000 plus $50,000. I mean, so that way there's a trade-off there based on the maintenance cost. We haven't finalized that yet. Once we do, we're going to bring that to council so that way we can start negotiating an agreement with them. But we'll look at the maintenance costs as part of that. And Chief Troop has only seen some preliminary discussions that we've had with that, but there'll be some additional conversations when it comes to those maintenance costs. So right now, they pay us per contract $208,000, something along those lines. There's a 3% escalation, but the maintenance cost is always $70,000 a year that we can take our trucks, drop them off over there, and then, we have a $70,000 credit in order to do that. So that's the way it works now.
Well, I would think in the negotiations that we would be able to show them exactly what the maintenance costs have been on those 2 particular trucks that we're replacing. and how long the warranty is actually for, so there would be no maintenance costs. So, okay, we've spent X amount of dollars on these trucks, and show them, what our yearly maintenance cost has been specifically for the 2 trucks that we're replacing, and then also then factor in how long the warranty is on it, and there would be obviously a lot less maintenance after the warranty runs out on the truck as well, and we could use that as part of our negotiation and trying to maybe be able to save some of that maintenance cost that's built into the contract. Just as a suggestion, anyway.
Yeah, we'll take a look at it, and you guys will have a chance to look at it and offer some suggestions of based on what we came up with.
Okay, thank you.
Cal, do you have anything? Anything else?
I do have some information on the warranties.
I think they're 5 years.
Just to remind council, it's a custom truck, so the body and structure is 10-year, the cab structural is 10-year, aerial mechanical 2, aerial structural 30 years, and then there's major vendor components and other things. So in other words, it's broken down into sections. So I don't have all of it here. That's what I do have here from.
But basically, the general overall things that are going to be costing you money is 24 months.
Right.
The frame, the structure, the ladder, all that stuff, typically is not going to, cause any cost on it.
And we've had a tremendous working relationship with Sutphen Corporation over the years. I mean, the ladder truck was, came into service in '94, and we're still using it today. So you're talking about a quality component, a quality truck, high quality truck. I mean, it's does not have those issues, or we wouldn't be here talking about replacing it with another one from the same company.
Do you feel that we are actually purchasing the truck that you really feel like that we need? I mean, I'm sure that you evaluated and looked at all your different options and stuff and said, we're not overbuying and we're not underbuying? Because I sometimes worry about underbuying rather than overbuying and not getting something to save $100,000, which would be relatively, 10% of what the cost of the ladder truck would be, to make sure that, you're not going to be buying one for a long time.
Right.
And, and make sure that you're looking at our needs moving ahead for the next 10 years. And are we really buying exactly the truck that's going to take us 10 years down the road?
Yeah, I think I can say that. I think we looked at all options. I formed a committee outside of my own office. I mean, it was the firefighters, the lieutenants, the captains, the guys that are going to be here long after I'm here. I had them go out and look at the trucks. You guys are on them. Tell me what you want. Tell me what truck you want to go down the road in. And this is where we're at. These 2 trucks are designed, when I said they were similar, the cabs are identical. The layout of the compartments are going to be the same. The wiring for battery-operated tools and things like that, all identical. It's laid out to operate well into the future. The aerial itself, being that it is a little shorter than what we currently operate, but it reaches what we need to reach here in Tequesta. It's got the smaller wheelbase, so I'll be able to get it into smaller roads and in closer to buildings than I could with the larger truck. So I think from a flexibility of operation standpoint, this is this is the direction we need to go.
Okay.
First, when I did the shifts with the guys, I had this opportunity to ask the same question and meet with the guys that had actually been formed this committee, and the response they gave was, yeah, we've looked at it in light of what Tequesta needs are. The area with the bucket, they said, hey, that's overkill for this community. We don't need to spend the extra money. The quint was what they said, as the chief described, would give us the flexibility and the capability and the capacity that we need to best service this community. I do know too, I was there too when the manufacturer came in and did his presentation, and he said with absolute certainty there's going to be a price increase January 1st. He also said a commitment letter isn't sufficient for a variety of reasons. So, he basically said if we want to lock in the price and we recognize the length of delivery that is, the time it's going to take, that they will need definitive purchase orders before the end of the year if we want to take advantage of the situation as it is now. Plus the interest rates too, that's the other issue.
Yeah.
Trying to lock in those interest rates because they will, they'll lock in. So.
Mm-hmm.
I have one more thing I failed to mention earlier, and it's actually just an offset. So engine 85 is currently debt service at, Hugh, you want to help me out here? It was 48,000, roughly a little over 48,000. It goes off the books in fiscal year '23, so there is a little bit of an offset with that truck coming off. These trucks coming on.
I'm still just kind of having a hard time with the ladder, and just thinking on the operational side, you mentioned that we haven't used our ladder.
Right.
And so I'm just trying to think of when a resident or a business owner calls 911 and they get through dispatch, who says what truck goes on scene?
Okay, so those are just dispatch guidelines. We can adjust those as we see fit. All we have to do is a letter to Palm Beach County Fire Rescue saying this is what we want. So that's why I said we can adjust it to.
So that's the policy you're talking about?
We can do it. We can do it either or. The captains actually already have the authority to change it on the fly. So
Okay.
if you're dispatched in one truck and you want to go in the other, you simply tell dispatch you're going in the other truck. So in either case, we have the ability to dictate the response. Obviously, I would try to automate it as much as possible. So that would be that.
And what's the disadvantage of having the ladder compared to the other one? Does it hold less gallons?
Yeah, I would say if you're going to compare the two trucks. Okay, so one has a big ladder on it. The other one has more water on it. The pumps are going to be the same. The ladder truck will carry slightly different equipment. It'll carry, for example, Stokes baskets and a lot more rope rescue equipment for pulling people off of roofs and what have you. So that would be the main difference, would be the equipment and then the water. So that's why we would look at the difference in the response guidelines. So, we go to a house fire, there's people, usually, more concerned about it, If I go back a few years when we had the rescue out in the country club, our second due trucks were delayed. So that first due company had to put water on a fire, and we flow, depending on the number of lines, 200 to say 400 gallons a minute, 500 gallons a minute, depending on what we have out. That particular night, they had an 1 3/4 out. That's close to 200 gallons a minute. They also pulled a 2.5 to the back, 250 to 300 gallons a minute. You can do the math on the minutes. I'll be out of water pretty quick if I don't have 1,000 gallons. If I only have 500, I can't even do what I just said. In this particular instance, the water's not there to put the fire out. The water was simply there to buy the rescue crew time to go in the building and make the rescue. You're acting as a big sprinkler. You're not going to stop the fire in this case. So having a large amount of water on the fire truck, certainly on residential, is important.
How far apart are the fire hydrants in the residential area?
We have a tremendously good fire hydrant system here at Tequesta. I'd say in most of the country club, no more than 300 feet.
200?
I'd say no more than 300.
Like
300?
every few months.
Yeah.
And I'll defer to Matt. You have any idea on that?
The maximum distance is every 500, and in a lot of cases, less than that.
Right. I would say average, Tequesta's pretty good. And the water department works pretty good with us. I mean, even on Beach Road, we talked to them about putting in more hydrants in and around, where they were doing their work, just so we could have better hydrant access for the high rises.
How many feet of hose do y'all carry on the truck?
We've got about between 1,000 and 1,200 feet of 5-inch, so that's our supply line. We've got various lengths of the tack lines.
Chief, you mentioned in addition to the rescue capacity, you mentioned the ability with the ladder, with the Quint, to have direct streams get up on top of a fire, whether it's commercial, residential, and the benefits that provides as well.
Yeah, so when you have commercial fires, just a rule of thumb here, daytime, when people are in the businesses, the fire is likely not to be very large. You're going to see it quickly. You're going to call 911 early. It's smaller. Nighttime, there's nobody there. So what we usually get there is typically law enforcement sees the smoke coming from it's already a well-involved fire. So when you talk about well-involved fires, the old axiom is, hit it hard from the yard, so to speak. So we want to be able to put as many gallons per minute on the fire as fast as we can. So we can do that. We can do it from an engine with a deck gun, but sometimes we just don't get the height or the reach or the range. We need a master stream that's elevated, and that's where a ladder truck would come in. Your average commercial fires, just getting to the roof to quickly cut a hole. We cut holes for a variety of reasons. Most of the time, it's simply to let the heat and the smoke out. We're letting the heat and the smoke out. The attack team can come in from underneath, and because the heat and the smoke are gone, you move faster. You can see. It's as simple as that. You see better, you go faster.
So there's a safety element too.
The other thing you can do with cutting holes in the roof is something called a trench cut, but only if you can get there quickly. You can put a trench cut into a spot. I can deploy hose lines nearby next to it, and the fire will burn to the trench and stop. In other words, I can protect the rest of the strip mall simply by doing certain tactics. So
overall, would you say, because we're not really that much commercial anyways, Tequesta is mostly residential, would you safely say that we could use the ladder truck in the future for some of even the two-story houses?
Oh, absolutely. And, you're seeing a lot of, tearing down and rebuilding of homes in this area. I mean, I do think you're seeing bigger homes going in, I think is the norm, no matter where you look. So,
And would you
with
say
that
you
in
could use the
mind-
ladder for something other than fire?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So,
What about
if
putting
we
it,
pulled
like,
up
near
on
the
a
river?
residential, if we pulled up on a residential with the aerial, 2 stories, and there's somebody hanging out the window, it's gonna be a lot easier for one guy to get on the controls and swing the ladder, excuse me, I like to talk with my hands, maybe you've noticed. I swing the ladder to the window and get the guys up to the window quickly, as compared to going over to the side of a truck, hitting a button, watching the ladder come down, and then watching 2 guys physically carry a ladder over. And these are not Home Depot ladders, no offense.
Right, so
If
the
you
plan
own
is
some,
to, the plan is
these are
to
heavy.
use the truck and not let it sit like the other one did.
That's correct.
Okay.
And actually, early on in its history, that truck didn't sit. I mean, it really didn't. If I go back, and I go back a long ways here, you guys know that. In the 90s, we did use it. So,
And as you said, without the Quint, our ISO rating will drop at least 1, which means homeowners.
that's what I was told,
And
yes.
businesses will pay higher insurance rates.
Yes.
Even if
I
we don't know
would- yeah, I
exactly how
can't-
much.
I can't quantify that, but yes, that's what I was told as far as the ISO points go, and how much or how little they pay, that's insurance companies, so.
So we haven't used a ladder truck in 20 years.
No, that's not true.
So, you said we used it back in the 90s.
Yeah, I'm saying in the 90s, we used it quite a bit. Over time, it fell out of favor for a couple of reasons. One was reliability, but probably most important was just the ability to switch from truck to truck. You're not staffing it, short of asking for 3 more people per shift. I cannot simply staff it all the time, and an engine and a rescue. So you have to cross-man, in other words, one truck or the other. So if I think about it, in the 90s, one of the things we were trying to do, again, was 2 sets of gear. This is not a new argument, and we had 2 sets for a brief period, and we had the ability to switch back and forth. We gradually lost that over time, and with that, you lose the ability to go from truck to truck. So imagine, if you will, I know most of you have been over the fire station and walked around in the gear, put the gear on, maybe done those types of things. Imagine going to a truck and you're being dispatched to a structure fire and trying to grab all your stuff and then carry it to another spot and get dressed and get on it and make sure you don't forget anything. That's not what I expect out of firefighters. I expect you to get in the truck, go to the scene, do it as quickly as you can. Get there and be professional and use the equipment at hand. So that was one of the issues that led us to not use the aerial as much. I think the other issue, and probably more recently, is really just reliability. It's hard to trust the truck when it's constantly has an issue, whether it's with the pump or with the aerial or the breathing air on the truck. It's hard to trust it, and then it's also hard to trust it when I know I'm gonna create a 1-minute delay just switching from one truck to the other. I don't think that would be a good choice by any commanding officer.
Any other questions?
I got a couple more.
Go ahead.
The trucks that the county use right now, what's the manufacturer on those?
The aerials,
Either or.
okay, they have different trucks, but they do have Sutphens. So some of their engines are Sutphen. I don't know if they're all Sutphen. I mean, they have a huge fleet, so I can't speak to that. Their aerials they have some Sutphens. They are switching to another manufacturer, but I don't know the whys or the hows on that.
Is there a reason we're not getting 2 quotes from 2 separate types of manufacturers?
Yeah, I think for us, it's just continuity and familiarity with the product, and again, we're going to have at least one Sutphen engine still here, so that's part of it. I do think, in the case of Palm Beach County, their maintenance crews are used to working on Sutphen. So again, I think we're more likely to keep our trucks in service because they are familiar with the equipment. And in fact, they may have the parts needed to repair it.
And if there was a fire anywhere in the village, do we have the ability to take both trucks?
We do not currently have the staffing to take both trucks, not normally. So if we were to have 6 on duty, which is right now about half the time, we could consider another operational change, which would send basically both trucks to the fire scene. I'd be hesitant to implement that, not having staffing more than half of the time. It's fairly confusing to dispatch. The commanding officers, the captains, have the ability to do that. So if you drop the rescue out of service for the call and you take both an engine and an aerial, dispatch would automatically backfill it with another rescue. So you'd still get the rescue, it's just that you'd get your truck sooner. And yes, if money were no option, I'd be asking you for 3 or 4 personnel and all that to make all that happen.
Well, the reason we're having this conversation is because money's an option.
Yes, that's why we're having that's absolutely why, yes. I planted money trees. I won't tell anybody where they are
Let us know.
for obvious reasons, but
So Chief, you mentioned you've been here a long time.
I have,
I know you haven't been chief the whole time.
no
Do
ma'am.
you know when the last time it was that the fire department asked whichever sitting council was here at the time for a truck?
Every year.
An aerial? I don't.
Just curious
I
why
don't
it never
have any
got
idea
looked at.
why, or when, or if. I really don't know that at all.
Okay.
Again, I think, and even in the manager's report and the one slide I showed you, 2014 to 2019 would have been, to me, the wheelhouse to make the move. I know when I came on, aerials was hot on my issue. I believe I talked to you, Mr. Stone, even prior to you becoming a council member about that. And I think the only reason I went for the rescue first wasn't dollars and cents. It's just simply we used the rescues more and they were in just as bad a shape, realistically. We had to get the rescue bought. I also, I hate looking backwards because it doesn't do us any good, but we probably should have bought the rescue before I came on board too. Mm-hmm. And I think then things would be different, but that's in the rearview mirror. That's
Sure,
not
that's
I'm
why
not-
I said I appreciate that graphic you put together so we can consistently look at the time frame of when the next trucks are coming up. Because I think any council that's sitting up here has to consistently look at those things and always have them in the near future for a plan.
So part of the-
One of the things I like about the proposal is that it does tend to balance the ship quite a bit.
What are our monthly payments gonna be?
I have that
That was a
actually.
$200,000 number, I think. 2 years out.
1 second, it was,
Excuse
I think you gave the number of
200. I did it on a year, on 2.5%, it was 214,000 a year.
Okay.
And on a 3%, it was 220,000 per year.
And you have one truck that'll be paid off, current one.
And you
That's
have the,
48. And to your point, with the new trucks and with the warranties, when we look at the contract that we have, you certainly could look at diverting a portion of what's currently being paid to us for maintenance purposes, at least for some period of time, you could divert some of that to help
Well,
pay
you
for
know,
the new trucks.
Going back to the maintenance, I mean, I just went through, a lot of equipment changes and stuff with my business. And we look at it from all angles, obviously, of what our operational cost is, per hour. And the maintenance cost is a big factor for us. Once you get a machine that's 5 or 6 years old, your maintenance cost can really get relatively expensive. So we factor that in, even though we're paying more for a new machine, we know we're not gonna have any, real serious maintenance costs for probably the first 3 years. So, and we evaluate all that. So the maintenance savings and stuff for us on buying new equipment with warranties and stuff, and even after the warranty goes out, is a huge, huge expense for us. Of course, we wear our stuff out a lot more than what you do, but, anyway, I would still wanna go back to that maintenance deal and see if we can't save some money.
I think when you send that report for the total maintenance, you can see what the itemized by unit, and you'll be able to see what the other units are gonna still traditionally cost us. I think most of your maintenance in the last year has been with one of the most recent trucks.
Yeah, and again, I can break that down for you. Oddly, I'd say if I looked at the last 3 years, it's a different truck each year that leads. The aerial is consistently, if it's not 1, it's 1B. You know, it's always close, and then the other trucks kind of take turns as to what's broke on them. You know, even recently with 285 kind of having a pretty good run. Again, it's not used as much, so as you use it, the guys discover more things that are wrong with it, or in fact, they become problems, and then we have to get it fixed. So there is also that.
So even if we move forward with this and we vote on this in a couple months, that current ladder truck that we have, we haven't used it in a long time. What's preventing us from scrapping it these next 2 years and not even adding any maintenance cost to it?
Are you suggesting getting rid of the ladder truck completely?
If we haven't used it in how many years?
Well, if you get rid of it completely, the first thing I would tell you is about the ISO. So you're liable to take a significant hit there. And secondly, we would not have the capability of using the ladder truck. So that would be completely gone.
Can you tell me
Would
the last
not
time we
be
used
able
it?
to, what's that?
Can you tell me the last time we used it? I know there's been fires and there's been ladders
Right.
showing up to fires. Obviously ours wasn't that ladder truck, so I'm not concerned about that ladder truck.
Right.
You know, it's not gonna even be called,
Right.
right? So,
Well, I don't have the number here, just to answer your question, straight away. And again, that's not what I'm proposing.
I know that.
I'm
I'm just
proposing we
talking
use it differently.
questions here.
Right.
Try to get down to the answer, so.
Are there any state regulations for municipality that require you to have a certain amount of emergency equipment?
It wouldn't be state, you're getting into NFPA guidelines and so forth. We would have to have a ladder here of significant height, I want to say, to reach 35, 40 feet. I don't have an apparatus outside of that ladder truck that would carry that. So that would, hopefully that answers
So
your
who does regulate it?
regulate the fire department.
Right.
Again, we follow NFPA guidelines and so forth. ISO
So it's
gives us-
federally regulated
I don't
then?
think anybody regulates it.
Excuse me?
I don't think there's a regulation, it's us. I mean,
Well, it's more than
Well,
us.
it's-
ISO
Yeah.
evaluates the various departments, and depending on your equipment, as the chief said, all the other factors, they give you a rating. So if you diminish your capacity to respond, your ISO rating can drop. And as he said, there's a range of 1 to 10.
Well, if we went from 4
So to 2.
Now
to
we're
3 to 2, we've been at 3 before, so I'm curious what that number is. I would
Well,
imagine
before
we-
when he came here, it's 2 now. So when we get the ladder truck, should we get the ladder truck? We're probably at 1.
I don't
So
know.
we've got-
Well, no,
No.
it will be retained at 2.
So if we
We're
get
2
rid of the
now.
fire, we get rid of the ladder truck now, it's gonna go from 2 to 3.
Hmm.
And so we're paying whatever a month, a year of maintenance for that truck that we'll never use for the next 2 years.
Well, we're not paying it. They pay
It
us
takes
to
a portion
serve,
of the 70,000.
Yes,
And we
they-
go above and beyond the 70,000.
Yes, they
So if we
pay
don't
us-
use it, it's,
they pay us to
You lose.
service their area, certain areas. We get direct remuneration for it, and we get a $70,000 credit for maintenance.
sure.
But if you give up the ladder, as he said, you're gonna lose at least 1 notch on your ISO rating. And it's gonna cost all your residents and your businesses higher insurance premiums. So I don't have a number to be able to say that continuing to maintain the truck is X and the cost to all of our residents and our businesses is Y. But I'm not.
Someone's smart out there to figure that out.
But I think the other thing is that we don't have a couple of months set aside. We would need to vote on this since prices will increase January 1st. And we need to actually have a purchase order in place. So we have until the December council meeting, basically, to make a decision on this one way or the other.
So I wonder what the insurance savings is from a 4 to a 2, and from 1 and so forth. And
And that's something.
To be clear, we won't go to a 1 without significant staff increase.
So we're going back, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You can finish yours.
I was just gonna be sarcastic. The insurance companies are regulating all this crap and stuff, and here we go again, they're telling us, what.
Who's running ISO?
Yeah.
So quick question, since obviously the ladder truck is a hot topic of conversation tonight. I'm not an expert on any of this, obviously, but with the recent development, buildings that have been completed, ones that are multi-story, ones that are currently under construction that are multi-story, and ones we know that are coming up on the plate for, potential site plan approvals. What does that do to your vision and what the needs could be for a ladder truck, since we do have multiple multi-story buildings that are going up?
Sure, most of the ones here along US 1 are all 3 and 4 stories, so I think that's what we're talking about. This area, this ladder truck would serve them fine. I mean, we'd be able to get to the roof with them, we'd be able to get the windows and do what we need to do with the aerial device. Of course, the high rises on the beach go higher than even our current ladder can go. So you always have that issue. As we build new buildings, they're almost always required to have sprinklers in them, because that's what the code says now. When you have buildings that are sprinklered, it does reduce the need for other devices. They don't count against your ISO rating, of course. So that's also something that we have to look forward to as we see rebuilding going on.
So are all new buildings, since they're all being built, the new ones that have sprinklers in them, it doesn't impact whether or not you have a ladder truck or not, because they already have sprinklers?
Because they have the sprinklers. Now, you still have the height issue, so you still have the rescue issue and so forth. With the sprinklers, it really eliminates the, when you look at a big building, one of the things they do is there's an equation, tells you how many gallons per minute you need to put out a fire in that building. When you have sprinklers, you can eliminate the building. So these big buildings don't count against us as much. Like I say, we can't still have a fire in them, just that ISO use it differently.
So all new commercial buildings won't hurt our ISO if we don't have a ladder truck?
That's not exactly what I said.
Okay. That's what it sounds like.
ISO has already spoken on this for our area. They just recently did the review. We recently asked them the question, and they very specifically said we would drop from a 2 to a 3.
I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand that. I'm just, okay.
Well, I understand new buildings have the sprinkler, and then you also have the requirements for the hour rating for the corridors and all the shafts, so
Yeah.
I'm specifically was asking in regards to meeting the reach for the multi-story buildings. Like, so even with the sprinklers and, the shafts and corridors with a rating, people might not be able to get out. Do you see a need, or are those buildings built well enough to where you won't need the ladder as much to get people out if there's a fire in a multi-story building?
Well, obviously, the newer buildings are going to be safer just because of all the things you just said. I mean, most of them, again, are sprinklered, so the idea that the fire is going to be large is less likely. That said, it's not to say that we've not seen fires in sprinkled buildings. Okay, you still have smoke that you have to get out, things like that. There's still a reason to put the ladder up. Sometimes you have to go to the roof, for example. We've had fires on top of roofs. The life safety is minimal, but you still have to get there. Air conditioning, AC handlers, and so forth. We've run that here in Tequesta a couple of times in the last year. So you do still see the need to quickly get to the roof in order to mitigate it and keep it small.
First time I met you was at a fire in my building.
Was it?
So, trust me, I understand the
Yeah,
service that
yeah.
you provide, and you did cut a hole through the roof, and I understand how all that worked, and it happened on a Saturday night.
I remember
Yeah.
that, yes.
So,
And I think
It
part
was
of it, if you look-
Captain Tillis, I think, pulled a line inside, put your fire out.
probably.
If you look at the difference between
Was there?
purchasing 2 engines versus an engine and a Quint, you're talking about approximately, $400,000 over 10 years, so it's $40,000 a year. And you need to take that $40,000 and say, okay, what kind of additional capacity does that give us? It keeps your ISO rating in place, which is going to save your residents and your businesses on their insurance premiums for the next,
How much, 40,000?
I don't know precisely, Kyle, but I'm not talking about the exact amount. I'm saying you've got 6,000 residents, you've got multiple businesses, they're gonna save money on an ISO 2 versus, doesn't matter, I'm talking philosophically, ISO 2 versus ISO 3. It's also the capacity, as the chief's saying, you got somebody up on a 3rd floor and they're stuck, okay? And you can swing that ladder around and get up there quick and get that person out alive. What's that worth to you? If you get up on top of a fire and get the fire out much more quickly, and it increases the safety for our own personnel. Tyler, you can shake your head, that's
No,
fine.
I think
But those are all,
the idea of safety is not something that I'm talking about here, because
cost, I'm talking about cost versus safety versus all these different elements.
I'm saying you're spending $40,000 a year as a community, okay? Spread out over 6,000 permanent residents. We're talking about $6 a year per resident, okay? You're gonna save money on your insurance. You're increasing the safety factor for your firefighters if there is a fire and they have to go in there and contend with the issues. You're increasing the capacity to be able to help people in a situation like that. Those are all the things. I agree, it'd be great to have hard numbers, maybe we can get them. But again, if we do want to realize the savings on these trucks, and we do want to try and lock in the interest rate, as I said, we will need to vote on this no later than the December council meeting, because they need a purchase order. A commitment letter will not suffice.
Well, let me ask this. Have you looked at how it's gonna affect our budget and our ability to be able to, that's it right there?
I have it there. So before I jump into this, you know, I give you my philosophy, I guess, but, you know, as I got here, you know, I seen a lot of equipment, everything from the water to our police to our fire that, you know, was underserved, you know, I'll say, not really well taken care of, and we came up with plans. You know, Matt's done an awesome job over in the water department, you know, looking long-term. We've really taken care of our police department vehicles, and we have a sustainable plan. You know, this is an effort. We're in a financial situation where we're able to do this and come up with a long-term plan for our fire department, that, you know, has obviously shown that we need that. You know, just philosophy, I mean, we serve at the, you know, serve at your guys' you know, will, but I think we've made a commitment to our fire department. I think it's important that we take care of our fire department. You know, we have employees over there that, you know, they go out and they do their job, you know, to the best of their ability, sometimes putting their life on the line. I would want to give them the best equipment possible to do their job. And that's what we're doing here. You know, you can say that we can kick the can down the road for you know, aerial vehicle 5 more years. But at some point, we have to give them the tools to be successful. And we can argue that, you know, maybe the aerial isn't that, but I think just come up with a sustainable plan for the vehicles is the important key here. And so that's what we're really trying to do. We're trying to show that we can do it financially. We can go over that. We can do that. You know, $40,000. I mean, you know, I don't know what the ISO rating is. I don't know that, but you know, for me, you know, all the intricacies that the chief has brought out, my thing is just really wanting to have a complete plan over a long period of time to replace the vehicles. And you know what that looks like. This is the option that we came tonight. We can, you know, we can look at different things if you guys want, but you know, looking at it financially, and you know, like I said, give any department we're in, let's give them tools to be successful. And you know, we've made a commitment to fire. I mean, that's evident with our hopefully our next contract coming up. I mean, I think, you know, nobody wants to see our fire go anywhere. We love our guys. Let's take care of their equipment too. So just looking at you know, just looking at the financial implications over a 5-year plan, we've looked at this exercise the last 3 years that I've been here. When I first got here, this was all in the red. So you know, looking at it now, it's much healthier. Obviously, we have some ARPA funds that will help us in the first couple of years of this, and this is unaudited. This is our best projections for this. I can send you guys this. You guys can look at it. Some of you guys have seen a version of this in the past. But when you start looking at, you know, our approved budget for 2022, you see that we're zero. You know, we're a little higher here because we have our ARPA funds that are taking care of us. And this is all with projections of, you know, a 3% ad valorem, and we have some police, fire, and personnel costs that are rolled in. But getting really a little bit further deeper into this, we're talking a little bit about the surtax funds. So if you look at our surtax, you know, fund and it's healthy. I mean, we have a good amount. So, you know, estimating with the water utility tax and the 1 cent coming in, you know, we have the 600,000 coming in. So this kind of just shows you where our balance is, and you can see it gets a little better. The yellow is where we have the fire trucks in, you know, for those years. So I'm just trying to project that, you know, we're in a good, healthy situation that we can put together a good program for trucks that, you know, the next staff, the next chief, hopefully, there's not a conversation, because it's just a well-drawn-out plan, similar to what we have with the police cars. I mean, hopefully the next staff, the next chief, hopefully Chief Medina's here for a long time, but it's a really easy conversation, because we really thought it out. It's very strategic, and that's what we're trying to do, is come up with a strategic plan. So, with that, I mean, we can answer, he can obviously answer all the details of that. I was looking at it from a more, strategic financial situation, how we can make this work for the fire department.
I would say, with the right equipment, we take care of our police and fire, and then they take care of us. That's I guess the way I'd kind of sum it up.
Well, I'm a believer in having good equipment. I'm basically in the equipment business. I mean, not really, but, that's what we use every day. So I'm a believer in having something that's dependable, that you can count on, and know that when you go out there and you need to fire it up, it's going to start and it's going to function and operate correctly and safely. Because safety is also a huge factor and stuff that you want to make sure that the guys can have confidence in their ability to be able to get up on the ladder or whatever, or run a truck down the road and feel safe in it. And also not jeopardize our citizens or any other person that may be traveling our streets here in the village. So I'm a believer, and I mean, I think that if it looks like to me that it's doable from a financial standpoint, and at this point, I would say I'm certainly in favor of moving forward with the idea of purchasing the vehicles.
And just full disclosure on the financial part, because Hugh would probably get me if I didn't, but, we have got back to our fund balance policy, or we should be showing that to you guys in the next month or so, but, during the time that we have not borrowed the loan or have loan proceeds, this will go against our fund balance policy, because it's going from unassigned to assigned. So we will take a hit on that until we have the revenue to show that, which, as we get a little closer to the vehicles actually coming, that's when we'll initiate that process. So, you will see the fund balance and how it will affect that in the next 12 months, I guess. So
I know one talking here a lot about the ladder truck, and I just be real clear, I am, again, all for making sure you have the exact right equipment that is needed. And the only reason I'm asking these questions is because the ladder truck is something that, in my mind, we have not used. We always have Palm Beach County coming with a ladder truck at some point or another. So I'm just looking for that justification of why we need it, and it's, to me, knowing that we still have one coming from Palm Beach County. If not, they're going to come in a rescue and everything associated with that. So it's purely based on the ISO rating.
Well,
Okay,
bear in mind
if I could real quick on
Bear in
that.
mind too, with the bridge going down,
Yep.
that's gonna impact the ability for them to get up here in the time.
Well, not only
that
that
it's gonna
too,
take.
Mayor, if they're on a call, and, they have to go to another station to get a fire truck here, I mean, that could potentially happen. So we can't always, 100% of the time, count on them to be here in the time that would be necessary should we get in a situation where we needed a ladder truck. And I appreciate what you're saying, Kyle. I appreciate the side of being frugal, and looking at it and stuff to make sure that we're just not spending money because we have it, and something that we can put in the budget and afford to buy it.
Right.
I'm 100% supportive of analyzing it from that standpoint, because I think that that's part of our job, is to be prudent, with managing the money, even though that we can afford to do that. But with that being said, I mean, and you concurred that I do feel like that it's something that we do need and should probably, in my opinion, again, move forward with the idea of doing it. And I think that you are too. But again, I appreciate your side of caution and making sure that we are making the right decision.
Well,
The logistics way, I totally get where you're coming from. And that's why I was kind of asking you earlier, detail-wise, is it not just for commercial? I want better confidence in how we're going to use it on the residentials, whether it's the new modern houses that are taller, or if it's the older houses, you need to get above the roof to cut a hole, or if we have to use it for another reason other than a fire, because we don't really have that many fires. Is there a way you could use a ladder to get over the river, or I don't even know, you'd have to explain it to us. But also, I understand the staffing part. So that's the policy part I'm gonna be looking forward to you sending to us, because how do we make that judgment call on the dispatcher side to know which truck to send? Because we don't have enough crew to send both trucks.
That's correct. So if staffing remains the same, like I said, we did do a little study, and if we were in the house and the dispatch came over the radio and said, there's a call, what we looked at was commercial and high-rise. So, and apartment buildings, we view them the same way. We would have responded to between 400 and 450 runs in the last 3 years. So 150, say, a year that we'd be using the aerial device on, just with that one change. And it doesn't really address two-story residential structures. It really didn't do single-family homes of that size. That's something I'd have to ask dispatch if it can be address-specific, so to speak.
Well, I think
That's the other thing.
probably use the ladder truck, should we move forward with it, with the purchase of it, now that we would have confidence in the truck
Yes.
as well, because now your team has lost the confidence in the old truck and dependability aspects of it all, and so they probably tend not to dispatch it as often now because of the age and the unreliability of it.
I would say that's fairly accurate. We're not nearly as confident in it as we used to be. To speak to Mr. Stone's question about about Palm Beach County responding in, I would, one thing just so everybody knows, that truck is ladder 15, that's out of Juno Beach. So the difference is time. So if we were to use our truck, for example, we'd be there much sooner than ladder 15
Oh, yeah.
would be there. So,
I'd say probably.
And I think you
that.
guys all know that, but I just wanted to be sure that everybody knows that's where that ladder truck is. If for some reason they're out, we would be talking about probably Martin County in 33, which is a couple of stations in the other direction. And again, in probably a slightly longer response. So that's where they're coming from.
I think something to think about too is, and I agree, Bruce, and Kyle, the questions you're asking, I'm, really respect it because I'm all about due diligence and making sure we're covering our bases and asking all the questions. But I've heard comments such as, we don't have that many fires, or we never use an aerial truck, and part of me says is that one time where
Exactly.
we don't get to that person and there's a tragedy. And I think of corporations that I've worked for, that the resiliency and redundancy that they have built into their companies, we should expect the same for our residents. And I know it all comes down to the dollars, always, right? But just keep those things in mind when we're considering this.
That's just like the building that fell in Miami. The reason why they didn't make the repairs was because of money. Look how many lives ultimately were lost because of that, and didn't want to spend the money in order to do the things that they should have done, 15 years ago.
We don't have a proper ladder truck today because of the mistakes we made 10 years ago. And the things that we've done here with Jeremy going through the process of creating these capital improvement plans is why we're going to be in a much better position 3 years from now. And it's all across the board, from the water to the roads, to the sidewalks, to the equipment of the police vehicles, the fire trucks. There's a reason we're taking these tough discussions, so we're not in this position 10 years from now. So
Exactly.
No, I agree with that completely, although I will say, I wasn't on the council 10 years ago, but I'm not going to disparage the decisions they made at that point because the economic times were completely different. We were in the deep recession, taxes were raised twice. They were running, this village as lean and mean as they could to try and minimize tax increases, and people's median incomes, real incomes had declined, not gone up. So, they tried to make the best decisions they could. Like I said, I wasn't on the council at that time, but they tried to make the best decisions they could in light of the circumstances they were in. Obviously the environment's changed and we have the opportunity to move forward in a different path, and I think we are, and I think we should. So I think, again, if we're going to take advantage of this, we do need to have a vote on this by the December council meeting. And I guess in between now and then, Chief, if we could try to maybe address a few of the questions that people have raised.
Just so I have everything that everybody wanted, I'm going to look into maintenance numbers specific to the trucks. I'll go back at least 3 years if I can pull the data. Insurance numbers. I'm not positive about that, but I'll do the best I can in getting some sort of insurance numbers. Maybe I can get some help from.
You might be able to have
buddy in
a
finance.
risk manager. That's really,
Yes.
I think, and working with you, they might be able to come up with some kind of.
I honestly think the issue there is going to be
guideline
the individual insurance companies.
It will
know
vary,
what they're gonna
but they all have underwriting criteria, and there's probably a range that you could probably, determine, or at least
Well, I
some
still
sort of
think
ratio of, something.
I still think, though, that you should be able to find a source that, an advertising, that you probably even get literature and stuff, and magazines, stuff like that. I don't know how y'all correspond nationwide, but I would think that there's a regular source where you could advertise and possibly sell these trucks. I wouldn't give up on the fact, I wouldn't undervalue these trucks. I mean, they've served us well, and they're still serving us today.
Sure.
That has some value to it, but you obviously know better than I. But I would still try to market them to the best of our ability to be able to get the most money that we can out of them when we go to sell them.
Okay, so I'll work to see if I can get an estimate on what they would be worth, roughly when we would be replacing them. Okay. I will also work on training numbers, and I think that's all I have in my notes. Was there anything else?
Just how that new policy would work.
New policy,
How they would
yes.
decide which truck to send, whether, I don't even know how that works. If the
Again,
caller
we
has to
would
say,
You would
just,
determine that.
the quick answer is we would automate as much as possible. So that would really be right in the dispatch guidelines. So right off the bat, I could say, commercial buildings, high rises, apartment buildings, send the aerial. Residential would be a little trickier. If we're aware of a residential property that we know is, particularly in need of an aerial response, then we would probably have to do that internally. So I'll look into that a little bit further, but most of it can be automated right through dispatch.
so the 1994 truck, is that considered vintage now? Because sometimes vintage is a little more
Parade ready.
Maybe you can market it as vintage.
We could maybe donate it to the Historical Society here.
You get an antique tag for it?
Something like that, yeah, probably. Honestly, it is one of the original fire trucks to the village of Tequesta, and that's kind of neat. I go back to the very beginning. I'm one of the last originals. Captain Tillis is the other one. He's retiring at the end of the year. When I retire 4 years from now, that era is over. So that truck, like I said, that's one of the last little things that we can point to. And so, yeah, I was there when that truck was new. I actually was the captain that took it on its first call, and it wasn't fire, by the way. It was over the line in Martin County, but it was real fire. We did actually get there first and do our job. So
That makes me happy and sad all at the same time. A little happy for your success, but
a little
sad
sentimental.
A little sad it's still here.
a little sentimental.
All right, anything else? All right, Chief, thank you very much.
You're very
Appreciate it.
welcome.
Did a great job.
Thank you for hearing me tonight. This is a very important topic to all the fire departments. Appreciate your time.
All right, item number 2.
Let me ask something before we move
Yes,
on.
go ahead.
So do we need to go ahead and put it on the agenda?
Well, we need to put it on the agenda by December. So, if there's a consensus to move it forward now, we could put it on the agenda for 2 weeks from tonight, if that gives the chief and you and Jeremy time to, get the answers back that people have been asking.
Okay.
So we could do it in mid-November, or we could wait till the December meeting. What do you?
I don't know, I'm trying to look at his face right now.
Well, whenever it's easiest for us to put it on that, to me, we pretty much talked it over tonight. I think it's just a matter of voting on it.
Yeah, I think we can have it in November, and, I think our deadline's Friday, or the 4th, I think that's Friday. So we can have it on the agenda. That'll give us time, even if we, can prepare everything for iCompass to be sent out.
Okay.
Obviously, we'll be able to have those answers before the 15th. So I think if everybody's comfortable moving it forward, we can move it forward for a vote for the November council meeting, make us feel better, so we're not, make sure we
Waiting
get
for the
those
last
rates
minute.
logged in. We'll have to do a budget amendment as well, so we can show that in the budget, and so that would be forthcoming as well. So, as long as I can get with the chief and Hugh and we can put that together, we'll try for November. And then I'll just advise you guys if we can't make that deadline.
All right.
Well, I think it's prudent on our side to go ahead and get it on there as quick as we can, so that it doesn't put you guys behind the 8 ball so much, trying to get everything done in a timely manner.
Well, you actually have to the 8th, because our next council meeting's the 15th, because we moved it for Veterans Day.
Right, I know, but our agenda deadline is Friday, the
Oh,
4th,
okay.
so.
Okay.
I would just say there's not enough time to get all of our questions answered, I would be in favor of pushing December.
Right. So it's-
Because I just don't want to be in a position like we have in the past where questions are answered and there's outstanding information. And
Yeah, we'll make sure, I'll make sure I feel comfortable putting it on there and we have information, so.
Okay.
I think regarding policy, that's something we handle internally. Sale of the trucks, I would go to Sutphen. I think I'll be able to get some sort of answers out of Sutphen and maybe talk with Doug Chambers on his past experience.
Somebody
selling
calls them all the
trucks.
time looking for a
Yeah.
used truck.
The insurance is the only one I'm not sure about. Obviously, that's not something I handle internally, so that'll be up to how fast I can get people to respond back to me. Training is internal. I think most of this we can get done. The only thing I'm not 100% confident in is the insurance.
Well, I mean, we've got some insurance brokers in town, so we should probably be able to reach out to a couple of them and just say,
Sure.
hey.
Make phone
how would-
calls.
you know, generally speaking, how would this impact commercial rates, how would it impact homeowner rates, and go from there. Okay. Chief, thank you again.
Thank you.
Item number 2 is a discussion regarding regulation of short-term rentals. I know we've had this conversation once before, and it's coming back to us again. Mr. Allen?
So we have discussed this before. Obviously, there's been some discussion about bringing it back. I know North Palm recently had something in Palm Beach Post that they had it, so kind of spurred some conversation. Bring it back the council never took any action on it before, and so this is here for consideration again. I have included some other cities or like cities that have passed this. It does meet the state statutes, and so that's kind of what governs this short-term rental ordinance. Any discussion that you guys have, questions, thoughts about doing this? Keith's here, can answer the technical part of it, so it's just up for discussion again.
Keith, did you have anything you wanted to add before we get into a conversation?
I would just say, as the manager indicated, we prepared this ordinance in 2020 based on the legislative session and a few tweaks to the state law regulating vacation rentals that happened at that time. The law at the state level hasn't changed since then, so what you have from us is the ordinance that we drafted in 2020. If the council directs that this move forward, there are some date deadlines in the document that have to be adjusted. I didn't make any of those changes pending hearing from the council, but this document pretty much takes you as far as state law allows without stepping on preemption limitations. As written, it would require vacation rentals to have a permit. In order to get a permit, you have to have inspections, and you have to have an application that has a whole variety of different pieces of information. There would be a permit fee that the council would set by resolution. That's what's contemplated by this document.
What classifies it as a vacation rental?
That definition is statutory. It's basically a residential property, whether it's single-family or multifamily, condo, apartment, that is rented or advertised to be rented for periods of time less than 30 days for 3 or more times in a calendar year.
Okay.
So that's the technical definition that makes it a vacation rental. Less than 30 days, 3 or more times in a calendar year.
Okay. Thank you.
So that's what you have in front of you. That's what the draft proposes to do, and just look forward to your direction.
So I know I've asked you this before. How does the village, if it was decided upon on council, and this was before some of these current council members are up here, I've asked this, how do we avoid daily and weekly rentals less than 30 days?
Well, state law does not allow, that's one of the preemptions. State
I
law
know,
preempts.
that's why last year I know we added that to the code.
Yeah, state law preempts you from regulating duration and number of times it's rented. So, I mean, the short answer is you can't at this point. There was if we had code on our books prior to 2011, then you would be allowed to, that code would be grandfathered. We did not, so regulating duration and number of times a year is something we cannot do, but we can do all the things that are in this draft in terms of requiring applications and permits and you know.
Well, let me ask you this, is that, let's say that I was an investor and I came in and I bought a house or two here in the village, and I put them on VVRO, and I've been doing that now for several years. So then they would have to come back and get permits and inspections and follow the guidelines and stuff of what you just stated.
That's one of the I think it's January 1st of 2021 is one of those dates. We'd have to adjust that, but you would have to provide a deadline for those existing operators to come in and comply with these new requirements in terms of applying for a permit, having the inspections.
Well, is it a permit for every time that they rent it, or is it just a one-time permit?
The way this is contemplated, it would be an annual renewal.
Okay.
In conjunction with the annual business tax.
Mm-hmm. So it's a nominal fee to do that?
That will be up to the council. The fee, the way this is written, the fee would be set by resolution of the council. It would become part of your fee schedule. Typically, should be a sufficient number to cover the cost of administering the program.
Yeah.
The inspections, reviewing the applications, processing, and that sort of thing.
And then the rentals are subject to taxes too, right?
That's one of the things in the application. It would contemplate the applicant showing proof that they're registered with the Department of Revenue as well as the county, so that it not only captures the state taxes but also the county bed tax. Because that's been an issue. A lot of these operators have been flying under the radar and not paying the county bed tax. So this does contemplate the application showing that they are compliant with those tax regulations.
When you do a yearly rental, do you have to pay the county bed tax with that? Just under this format here?
Sales tax.
Excuse me?
Sales tax, I believe.
Yeah, you still have to do the 6%, whatever it is. I thought it was 6 and not 7.
7 here,
And
with the add-on for the infrastructure component.
okay.
I'd like to hear how you're going to manage it. What departments are going to be involved with?
So the way that this, I don't know, you look like you want to talk, but the way that this is drawn out is to be the building department. What I would ask for if council wanted to move forward with this is give me an opportunity. There are some companies that will manage this for us, and so similar to like the Orange Liens system that we have in place, they handle all the lien requests, and they'll give us a portion of it back. And so I haven't vetted that completely yet, but I'd like to talk to a couple companies. That way they manage it. They try to go out and grab them and find the ones that are, and then just give us a portion of that back. And so we wouldn't be out any cost, but that's very preliminary. But this contemplates the building department doing that. I obviously wouldn't want to put that on them if we can do it a different way.
I mean, typically, the issues that are relevant to these inspections and would be building, code enforcement, and fire. Those would be the departments that would typically be most relevant in passing inspections and making sure everybody's code compliant with this type of a use.
And they would still
for
be-
the inspection part,
Right.
there's a registration part that the company will manage, the registration and fees. That's what I was referring to. So there's kind of two parts to this.
But the annual inspection, that element would still be with our
Yeah,
building.
yeah, that would still be.
Is there a clause in there for a fine should they not go through the proper protocol?
There are enforcement mechanisms in the document, yes, that would
And so
allow
we
us.
haven't established any fines for that yet?
The only thing that's established would be the standard code enforcement penalties, which for a first-time offender are up to $250 per day for each day the violation continues. And then if you're a repeat offender, you can go up to $500 a day for each day the violation is observed until it's brought back into compliance.
Do we have a judicial responsibility to somehow inform the people that are possibly using the VBRO and doing the rental business to make sure, because say they bought one and they've been doing it for 3 years and all of a sudden we enact this thing and put it into place, and then they're not aware of that, and then all of a sudden they are. So
Yeah, I
the
think
fine wouldn't take place until they'd been informed at that point
There
in
would be
time.
some education on our part, especially for operators that exist prior to an ordinance like this going on the books. You know, we have to give a reasonable time for them to be brought into compliance. We need to, you know, we don't necessarily know all of them, but there would have to be an educational campaign and get the word out as best we can. Then typically, if you went past that deadline and then we still discovered an operator that did not comply, then if we brought them to code enforcement, there would be a period of time that they were given to come into
Get in
compliance
compliance.
before any fines begin running.
Okay.
So,
Well,
so
it sounds like it's
that would
fair.
happen as well.
Sounds like it's fair to me. I mean, so far as giving them ample time to get in compliance and stuff should.
No, another element of this, if you look at what's been proposed, is if somebody is found in violation and they want to appeal, there is a right to appeal. Now, the way this reads right now is that appeal would come directly to the council. So one thing to consider too is, do you want, that would probably be the most efficient process, but the other alternative would be to say, okay, we're not going to bring it to council first, we're going to go to the magistrate, theoretically an independent body, right, to render a judgment, and then if for some reason, you know, they're not successful, then they could still maybe come to the council as a last resort. But that would be another element in this that we'd have to talk about and think about.
Yeah, and let me, if I may, clarify that a little bit. There's sort of a couple different kinds of violations we're talking about. If you're talking about an operator who maybe violates the requirements for how many people can be there, or when the trash cans are put out, or where they're parking, that kind of thing would go strictly to code enforcement. Now, if you're talking about either a new application for a permit or a renewal application, have the permit renewed, and that goes through the administrative process, and there's a decision made by the village manager to deny that permit, that's the kind of thing that as it's written in here, that decision is what would be contemplated to come to this council for an appeal, would be that administrative decision on giving them a permit or a renewal in the first place.
So Kyle, I'm glad you asked that question on regulation, because my concern years ago was the transient of people. Who is vetting these people coming and going? I mean, how do you know it's not someone with a criminal background and they're staying next door to a family home for just a couple of days? Aside from that, the concern is growing as the market is changing. So Bruce is right. There are people currently buying houses as an investment, and corporations buying houses as investments, and they're using them as businesses. Now, I'm not saying I'm against that, but these people don't even live here. And there is one in particular I'm thinking of, and they live in New Jersey. They are never down here. Who is regulating, who is coming and going, checking in another house every week? No one. And then if we're talking about they need to come in and apply, does the owner need to be here? Do they need to fly down and be in person? Do they need to have some sort of point person, whether it's a management company? Who is holding these people accountable rather than just free-flowing people coming and going into these residential areas? We are not that kind of tourist village. I don't think we are.
So
it's not Delray.
Let me try and answer a couple of points. One of the things the ordinance requires is that the applicant designate a responsible party, and this is someone that has to be on call 24/7, available to physically appear at the location within 60 minutes to deal with any emergency issues. That every vacation rental has to designate that person and provide their contact information in order to get the permit. And so that's number one. Number two, in terms of applying for the permit itself, the code contemplates, I think it's, the owner or a permitted designee. So just like with a development application, the property owner at the end of the day is the responsible party, but they're able to give us a designation of an agent, which typically could be a planner or an attorney. Property owner doing this could do the same thing. I designate this person to be my representative for purposes of filling out the application, and then the owner, ultimately, we have the owner's signature on that document. So yes, it contemplates the owner, but the owner could in writing give us an authorized designee if it's a corporation or if it's an owner that is not local.
I think
But there has to be local presence, there has to be local representation, and a local responsibility.
But Laura, to your point about vetting who's actually renting the property, I don't think there's anything we can do. I mean, obviously the owner, like if you go to VBRO, when you leave, the renter rates the owner rates the renter, right? And
Yeah.
and the owner should have a real interest in who's in that property because they've got a substantial investment. But we, I don't believe, can regulate or vet or.
And I just keep asking because it's one of my
I
thorns
know
in
it's
my
one of your
side.
concerns. I
And
recognize
that's
that.
one reason I don't love those systems like Airbnb, because it's just a star rating that's really vetting who's coming and going. And I'm sorry, I'm not gonna apologize for it actually, because the village, I don't treat it like that. I don't treat it like a wheelhouse here.
I
Like,
understand.
we are residential, we are a community family, we need to know who is coming and going. We've had 6 months renters, but it gives us plenty of time to get to know them. Perfect example, we have a person who has recently moved in to the village and has become a nuisance. The police have gotten involved, they've been really great, they've been professional and very, very delicate with the matter. However, the owner is there to help deal with it. So that's my issue with our residents, is who is, even if they're 60 minutes away, just who's being held accountable? The corporation?
Well, either the homeowner or the entity.
I'm
that
not
owns
trying
it.
to, I
Yeah.
keep talking to Keith about this because he knows this is just really one of those
Yeah,
things
and
I'm just so
whether you
frustrated
would-
with the state on.
Whether you adopt regulations like this or you don't, I don't have a way for the village to step in to resolve that issue.
Yeah.
There's no path
Hard- hard
for the
to
government to get there.
I know that, just
The normal laws though would have,
limit their in and outs for days and weeks.
I mean, you could have somebody buy, obviously, a house and become a nuisance.
exactly, I mean, that's, the
But
the
again,
law,
that's the owner.
No, I know, I understand.
the laws and the rules and regulations and stuff would be no different from them than it would be any other
Correct.
homeowner, you know, in my take on it here in the village and what the laws and stuff state, everyone has to comply whether you're a renter or not. So if they're a nuisance and they're making a lot of noise and call the police, they came over, file a complaint, da-da-da-da-da. You know, and I know it's aggravating to have, you know, an unruly renter in somebody's house next door to you. I mean, I would be aggravated about it if I had that next door to me. So I can understand anyone, for that matter, being a bit upset that it's a VBRO and they're coming in every weekend. They've got a lot of rowdy people that come in and out of there, creating a lot of, you know, noise and cars parked everywhere, et cetera, et cetera. But unfortunately, if they have the ability to rent, then, you know, they're gonna fall under the guidelines that are already in place. That regulates that for
But
anybody.
even going into regulation with what you're talking about, if there is a property, and let's say the owner doesn't live here, and they constantly get called on, what is gonna be the punishment for that person? I mean, that's where I'm stuck with the state league, because they own the property, but if they're constantly becoming an issue with their business that they're running in the middle of a neighborhood,
That's a good question. It could, is
we
it
have a
permissible if we
3
have
strikes
somebody
you're out?
who's, yeah, it's a constant nuisance? Can you say, okay, we will not allow you to rent, period?
So that,
Well, we can
Or
do
renew
that.
that permit.
so that's one of the things, you know,
Could we deny their renewal?
let me see how this reads on that.
While you look that up, I'll just mention that I had a resident that came to me complaining about this because their neighbor to the right was VBRO, their neighbor to the left was VBRO. So every week they had new neighbors on either side of them. They ended up selling their house and moving out because they wanted to be part of a neighborhood and they couldn't get it.
You know, again, I'm not against renting. We've had some amazing renters that we've met. They're cool adventures. You get to meet cool people, but they're here long enough to where you get to know them. And honestly, I mean, within a couple of weeks, within a month, you really know if someone's going to figure it out.
Yeah, the ordinance does provide for revocation or suspending a license, and that is one of the things, as this is written, that decision would be made administratively with a potential to appeal to the council. Now, I will tell you that one of the other hats I wear from time to time, I serve as special magistrate in West Palm Beach, and I've presided over a couple of cases where they've had short-term rental violations, and in their model, at least at some point in the process, it does go to a magistrate. But, you know, that, in those cases, I was dealing with noise and nuisance behavior, but then, you know, the remedy that was requested was, you know, we want you to suspend their license for a year or something like that. So there is an opportunity to punish bad behavior, and now I don't think that legally we could ever say you're never allowed to be a vacation rental again, but you could suspend it for a period of time or not renew it for a period of time. If there's a track record of, you know, proven repeated nuisance behavior from the same property because they're just continuing to rent to people that create nuisances, and because while we can't step in and say, no, we're not going to rent to that person, you can always regulate bad behavior, and that's the way, and that's.
Well, it sounds like to me it was well written.
So can we codify what constitutes abuses in such a way that it doesn't have to go to the magistrate? So for example, if we have so many calls to the police or so many whatever, at a certain point, hey, you're subject to revocation.
We can define nuisance behavior in terms of noise or overcrowding or parking or, you know, trash and that type of thing, and yes, we could.
What if it's harassment on another neighbor?
I beg your pardon?
What if it's harassment on another neighbor?
We'd have to
What's the police matter?
craft
I
that
know that,
language in an objective.
For the person renting, it's a police matter. They get punished by law. But then what happens to that owner that maybe keeps bringing in just
I mean, if they're like throwing
people-
trash over the fence.
Oh,
and-
no, I'm
and-
talking
and
like physical.
Noise, or if there's a
Walking up people's yards,
confrontation.
bothering them.
We would have to, the short answer is yes, we could do something. The longer answer is that we would need to make sure that we define that and explain it in the document clearly enough. You can't just say harassing the neighbor, that.
Well, I know that,
But-
I know
right,
that
so
word very
there's
well.
I think there's a
and I
way
know it needs
to.
to be very specific.
There's a way to address that, and we could work on adding language that addresses all of those types of nuisance behavior, and we could even put in the ordinance that, you know, if this happens, you know, the manager's authorized to either revoke or suspend for up to X period of time. If it happens again, X times 2 period of time, that type of thing. So yes, I think we could work
That's
on
fine.
that.
I'm just really trying to protect, you know, the safety of our residents. They should feel safe at home, and they pay taxes, and the property owner of a Airbnb will pay taxes. However, they're using it as a business. So the person who lives next door, that's their home. That's not their business. So it's two separate things for me when I look at it. And I definitely think of the person who is living there full-time with their family, or they're elderly and they're by themselves. I take that to heart.
I mean, you make an excellent point, and I think if you codify it too, then even when somebody comes in to apply for the permit, they're already on notice. that This is what we expect, and
Yeah, let's be
if these
upfront.
things occur, guess what? We're gonna revoke it.
I just think we need to be careful going down that road, because
That's why it's gotta
I am
be-
all for this ordinance. Kyle asked the one question I had was just regulation, so I think we need to look into that a little more. But as of now, I like to think I'm in support of this, and I do agree with Lori that, you know, you have, and this is assumption because we don't know everyone, right? But you have individuals and up to large corporations that are doing this, and they're not investing in our community. They don't care about our community, they're investing in themselves. But when you go down the road of like nuisance with the neighbor, and we put restrictions in this, what about, like you guys have already brought up, a homeowner and a homeowner? So are the same nuisance issues gonna apply to someone that's a homeowner versus?
Well, no, I mean, if there's a nuisance issue that's reportable to the police, it goes to the police. What we're saying is if there's repeated incidents of that from renters, if you're operating a business and you're bringing in renters and you're not screening them properly.
Right, but someone that owns a home next door to you could have that same,
Exactly.
that's all I'm saying,
When you
so.
take that to the police and it would be adjudicated, and it would be, there would be a remedy. What we're saying, I think what Lori's saying, however, it's different. You got two homeowners, they're actually living there, they're neighbors, you have to get that resolved. Here you have a situation where you have somebody owning it, and you've got a constant, you know, revolving door of people coming in. You're not, you can file something against that person, but you could still have a constant revolving door of people coming in and causing problems. The way you remedy that is you take action against the owner at that point and say, okay, we're not gonna allow you to rent anymore, because you're obviously not doing a very good job of screening the people who are coming in and using, you know, your property, and it's causing problems, you know, within our neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean,
I
that's
see
what
what you're
happened with
saying,
the
but there is
annual.
code
Trying to
enforcement,
differentiate it.
there is
Right.
code enforcement regulation for two neighbors who are full-time, who have issues between each other. There, depending on what's going on, there are regulations that help sort of guide the punishment, so to speak.
Right.
But again, I mean, it's just so hard, it is a delicate matter, which
Yeah.
is why I battle with
Oh,
the
I
state with
totally, I
it.
don't disagree, but,
It's-
I mean, you can have someone annually leasing, and it's the same problem. I think there's personally, for me, there's a fine line of over-regulation. I'd be interested if any of the other jurisdictions that have approved this have any kind of language for that.
Well, I think from a legal standpoint, the difference is, in the first example, it's somebody living in their house in a zoning district that's meant to have houses that people live in. In the second example, it's someone who owns the house and is renting it to make money
As a business.
as a business in a residential zone that's meant to have houses where people live. So the commercial element of that, it really is the difference in your concern for, you
Right.
know, treating.
That's the part I don't love.
Right,
So
of
what you're
course.
really doing is you're penalizing, if you codify it properly, and you say that the remedy is a revocation of your approval, what you've done is you've acted against the commercialization of the property, and you're saying, okay, you can't, until you get your vetting process in place where you have quality individuals coming in who, you know, are not causing issues for the community, you're not gonna be able to rent, basically.
You have a 1-year suspension.
Huh?
You have a 1-year suspension.
Yeah, it could be 1 year, whatever's appropriate.
I don't disagree, I
Just
just,
thinking of
there's
apartment
a
building,
fine
you
line
can-
from over-regulation
I
to me
agree.
sometimes.
So
So
let
I
me
just
ask you
think we
this.
should consider that is all, and see what other
What
nearby
if-
jurisdictions have done.
What if there is an incident at Publix, and they've had 5 a year, just because of whatever reason, people coming to visit their store? I mean, it's kind of the same concept, right?
I understand.
No, I wouldn't put it
Well,
the same.
that wouldn't, this ordinance wouldn't
Correct.
apply to that.
Correct, but it's kind of the same concept. People are coming to that business.
I guess the difference there is that that's a commercial entity doing a commercial activity in a zoning district that's meant to be
Commercial.
used as a commercial use. So that's,
There is a difference.
yeah, in my mind, that's the difference, is one's in the residential zone and the other is not.
Could you
Yeah.
put a clause in there and just simply say, should the village council or the village manager or village somebody decide that due to the continued code violations and being a nuisance or whatever, I mean, can't come up with the terminology that I'm looking for, that we could deny their renewal of it? It's to be up to our discretion, should they have a continual history of
You can put
violations,
something
et
in your
cetera.
code. Now, I would, in that case, when we're talking about denying or suspending, you could make the administrative decision, but I would recommend that be reviewed by an impartial magistrate. I wouldn't want that to come to you. I would want that to go to the special magistrate to make that decision, because that puts a level of impartiality on it, and it gives due process as well.
Okay,
And the better you define what constitutes,
exactly. You
the
have
less,
to define it.
yeah, one, they're on notice, so they know what the conduct is that's expected as an owner of that business. And two, if they violate it, the less arbitrary it is, the better you're standing to then take the appropriate course of action, I think.
Excuse me. Well, how many people do we really think we have that's doing the VBR?
A lot.
I think there's a
And
fair
there's like
number.
It is real.
And
MLS
there's more.
listings that advertise for it too. You can find like MLS listings, and in the listing it advertised, this will be a great Airbnb
And if you look up
investment.
properties and they come up as a business name, those are the corporation ones. And they're just buying them up because they can. $900,000,
Really?
some of them.
So is it safe to say that we would like to see this move forward, subject to perhaps a better enforcement mechanism along the lines of what the concerns that Lori's expressed?
I will take whatever I can get.
I think that it's fairly well written, to be honest with you. We have the ability to keep them in compliance and stuff. I mean, as long as they're staying in compliance with what everyone else in the village has to do, then, and then that certainly says that in there, I think we've got enough control in there, as it is almost, to regulate them.
Well, I think it's close, but I think Lori's concerns are valid, and I think maybe just addressing more succinctly that element and what would be justification for revocation might, and how that would be handled might be beneficial.
Yeah, I think it was well written. I'm
I
in
agree,
favor.
I think that's a good point.
I think Jeremy should provide the enforcement information we asked for, and then I would just like, if there's any other local jurisdictions that have an ordinance like this, if they have any stronger language with nuisance.
Okay.
Just so we can compare that. And then kind of a general statement too, Bruce had made about getting the information out there and talked about a possible grace period. I have been shot down in the past for that when I've asked for it. I think generally for all ordinances, maybe the village could put together a better protocol so it's more uniform with all ordinances, with how we get the word out, if there's a grace period before we start enforcing it. I think that's pretty important, so we're aligned with all ordinances. When it comes to, we'll say, when it affects our residents or businesses or contractors that service our area. That's it.
Okay.
In terms of process, once this is once we make these adjustments, this ordinance will have to go through the local planning agency before you see it again for actual first and second reading. Would you like to see this again in a draft form with the revisions we made before we start down that path?
I would.
We'll work on this this month, get it recirculated for review and comment. And, I think with that time frame, it's probably reasonable to expect that we could have this ready for a December LPA hearing, and then you'd see it back at the beginning of 2022 for first and second reading.
Okay.
Quick legal question. The ones that already exist, would this apply to them or are they grandfathered in?
Well, both.
Okay.
That's what we were talking about. There would be some period of
Just to
time
clarify.
that we would give them to.
Because they are buying up like crazy right now.
Yeah, they would have to have
Right.
some period of time to come in, apply for the permit and get the inspections, pay the
Okay.
fees, and get the license.
I'm good.
Thanks for not giving up on it. I know we've seen it a couple of times.
Okay, so that concludes this. Item 2. Item 3, an update from Jeremy on the US 1 Bridge project.
So this particular item is kind of two-part. I know the mayor had brought it up to FDOT when they were here about the signage, and so we wanted to get an update on where they stood with the signage to really keep them honest and make sure they're still working with it. They did provide an update on the signage, that they're still working through that. They are looking at both north and south side, plus on the west side, trying to put some signage. They also said that they were gonna be working on 95 and trying some of their, I think they used the word dynamic signage, that they would try to do something with that too. So they didn't provide, anything definite other than they were still working on, they thought that it would get done. The other part of this was, Molly had been asked by some residents some specific questions. So a couple of the other questions Molly provided to us. So when I reached out to FDOT, I did ask Molly if she wanted to join this meeting with Doug Chambers and I and Molly. And so a couple of these other questions, we had the traffic analysis improvements for Riverside Drive. I know Molly got that question. We did meet with them. They're very constrained on Riverside Drive because it, backs up to the bridge, but that was a, concern for some residents, and also concern as it stands today, it backs up. While they said it was a financial constraint, because of, the bridge and, physical constraint, but the monetary part was gonna take a huge part of that. They did say they were putting in the ITS traffic devices, and that should be monitored, on a daily basis or hourly basis, and they would make adjustments that needed to be made. And then the other, number 3, was the public safety communication dispatch in case of emergency. They did say there was going to be communication with dispatch and communications, but the other part we're working on is some devices that will communicate with our vehicles, our public safety vehicles, to the lights. So we got into conversation about, will FDOT pay for it? And so FDOT said they were going to look into it. They did get back to us, said that Palm Beach County is currently working on some devices and going through like a bid process. They told us hold off, make sure that the devices that they get are going to be similar to the ones that we would like. If that is the case, when they do that, take it back to FDOT. They would take it to see if they would pay for it. We are talking about 4 or 5 intersections. Each intersection, I'm just ballparking, $4,000 or $5,000 a piece. Then the devices are a couple $1,000s per vehicle. So, we're looking at a $50,000, $60,000 probably hit if we did it ourselves. We are going to try to get FDOT to pay for those. And then the last one, well, there was 2 other ones. I didn't put number 5 on here, but the traffic timing coordination at Tequesta Drive in Old Dixie. Obviously FDOT isn't monitoring that, but they did say that Palm Beach County would monitor that intersection, because as you know, right now it already kind of gets backed up, especially if there's a train trying to turn left going north. So they're going to monitor that intersection as well, make timing adjustments, work with Palm Beach County. And then the last one was the Martin County Bridge, and I asked them if they could help us out in kind of guiding Martin County not to shut that down at the same time as our bridge being shut down, and they said they didn't have any authority to do that in that process. So I didn't put that one because there's not much to report. We do have a meeting with Martin County next week, Doug and I, to meet with them and go over that bridge, that impact, and also talk about roundabouts. So Molly, if you have any other comments, I know you had some citizens that were concerned. So
yeah, just a couple other things, just so they're on record. And this kind of came about when asking about Riverside Drive, but it applies to all of the intersection improvements. So they basically monitor it for the first 2 weeks and then make adjustments based off that. So specifically at Riverside, since there's a physical constraints, they'll monitor the ITS, and then if there's something even as minimal as like adding a no U-turn sign, just they'll look at it and monitor it and do what they can.
Not to interrupt you, but U-turn where on Riverside?
No U-turn.
Like put a no U-turn sign.
Where
like
do people U-turn on
if you
Riverside?
U-turn, I'm sorry, on A1A. So
Oh.
you're going where it backs up on the bridge. So you're going
Okay.
northbound on A1A, that turn left onto Riverside. So it's that
Gotcha.
intersection. They can't make any improvements because of the physical constraints, but they'll monitor that intersection as well as all of them for the first 2 weeks before they start making adjustments and or adding additional signage if needed. We did ask about the Old Dixie and Village Boulevard intersection because there's concern there because it can already be difficult to turn left, and then if Dixie becomes a detour route, and again, that's Palm Beach County. They said they would talk to Palm Beach County about that intersection as well, so I don't know if they did when they met with them. And then there was concerns about Island Way and Country Club becoming a detour route. I think that would mostly be Tequesta residents. But they said there's really nothing feasible to do there because going that route would be longer than the planned detour is their projection. So they said there's nothing to look at there. That's it.
To piggyback on what you just mentioned about Southeast Island Way, when they redid the Tequesta Bridge, which is before I moved here, everybody had to take Southeast Island Way. And obviously the population then was even different. It was, you think? I mean, yeah, because it's houses,
Well,
but.
You mean the population along?
So just, we have some sort of data to
Along
pull.
Island Way. west-
Yeah, because
west
I
of
was
the
thinking
city.
about that like a week or two ago, when the Tequesta Bridge was down, everyone had to use that back way. And I was curious what those numbers kind of were as far as traffic-wise, cars going over it, because we're concerned about them shutting down that bridge, 1 lane each at a time. We kind of probably already have data to show to them, this is what you're gonna have to handle. Maybe not do it at the same time as the other one.
Well, part of the issue is they want to be able to route the heavy trucks back over the Tequesta Bridge. And so,
It's closed.
So when that bridge was built, again, I was on the council, but I was going to all the meetings at the time. And one of the concerns of the residents in the country club or along, Country Club Drive was the number of big trucks that were just constantly cruising through the village. So when the the bridge was built, the council at that time made a determination that no, other than the school bus, waste management, or if it's a truck that's serving Tequesta residents
Make that
specifically,
nice.
they could go across. That's still a bone of contention with Martin County, obviously, and that's, I think, part of the issue too with Island Way Bridge, correct?
Correct.
So we'll have to see what comes out of all that.
I know that will be a conversation about whether we'd be willing to change that, because it's already came up in the conversation I had with their administrator. And so I'll fill them out. I mean, obviously, there's got to be a conversation about, when they close their bridge, and, and then I'd bring, obviously you guys would make that decision. So I'll bring whatever that conversation leads to, I'll bring that back to you guys.
Other than that, you all know how strong I feel about our public safety having physical access to change the lights to get those people moving, not waiting for someone watching a TV screen or if they're in the back eating chips. I had a question for you, Chief, and I think I know the answer from a long time ago, but it might be different. Outside of a firehouse, not in Tequesta, but other ones, they have that yellow flashing light. How do they turn that red? Is it a button inside the station?
The lights that trigger the traffic
So
to
that
stop
way
in front of the firehouses.
busy firehouses can get out quicker.
That can be done a couple of different ways. I mean, you can trigger lights from the trucks directly. Most of the time, I'd say that's done through dispatch though. Once the signal comes in on some
just
firehouse,
lock
the
it.
doors come up, the lights come on, that type of thing.
Okay. I mean, obviously, we're talking 4 to 5 intersections. I was just curious how it, with all the technology these days, I was curious if it changed. over
Preemption
years.
device, I mean, I did meet with a company recently regarding preemption device specifically due to the US 1 bridge. The technology's changed quite a bit in the last 10 or 15 years. So the company that I met with specifically, it's literally 3 different ways. It tracks the vehicles through GPS. The vehicles also have a cellular device that contacts the light ahead of them. It also has a radio signal that contacts the light ahead of them. So the range is 2,500 feet or so on that. So that would be hugely
I was just
beneficial
curious.
to us.
I just don't love that middleman person of someone watching a TV screen, because that's just extra time in an emergency. We need to get those cars going.
So this isn't really, I mean, to me, what you just described is a benefit to the safety of the firefighters in the aspect of.
Benefit to everybody.
They don't
Yeah.
have to run through a red light,
Yes.
right? Because traffic's flowing and keeps it going, so that definitely makes it safer going through that intersection.
You'd see potentially better response times. You'd see less traffic accidents. We certainly don't want to see a traffic accident involving a fire truck and a residential vehicle. And specifically to the point that you're talking about with the bridge being built, I now have one way really to get to Jupiter Medical Center. So when you start talking about transporting patients, the bottleneck that's going to be there is going to be significant between,
But this
normal
won't help the
daytime hours.
bottleneck.
Well,
The devices on the truck won't help the bottleneck like a minute prior, right? It's
No, but it
to be
will
very-
keep the flow going
just as you approach it.
as we approach. Again, 2,500 feet, so
It's
that's
big.
pretty good
It's a half
range
mile.
there. So, yes, it would help with that. It's not the
Okay.
perfect response, but
Sure,
it
understand.
is a mitigating factor, and
Will help.
I am concerned about that.
I get yours, Commissioner?
That's all. I was just curious how those yellow lights work now.
Okay, any further?
I have one other item,
Okay,
if you're done with that one.
I think-
So,
sounds like we're done.
everybody's got their calendars with them. January 3rd falls on a holiday. It's a workshop day, and so we can put it on, we'll put it on the agenda, whatever you guys decide, we'll put it on the agenda for you guys to vote on. But typically, historically, January meeting gets canceled if it falls on one of those days. I think the last 3 years or 2 years it has been canceled, but that's at your, or we can move it to the Tuesday. That's your 2 options. So if you guys have a consensus, we'll put it on the agenda.
well, I think with the holiday and
What are the
travel
options
plans, either cancel it or move it to Tuesday.
I think it depends on what's going on. I don't want to choose to cancel it just yet,
You want to hold off until the December meeting?
but I know that's
pretty close.
I don't go anywhere.
It's a lot of travel, well, a lot of people
Well,
travel during that time.
Yeah, that's
too.
what I was saying. Like, I know that's another big chunk. for
I'm
a
out
lot
of
people
town.
to be out.
You're out of town?
We could cancel it.
That whole week.
Well, why don't we plan on canceling it? If something
Pressing.
pressing really came up, we can always
Okay.
schedule a special council meeting, so.
Yeah.
All right, let's plan on canceling it.
Okay.
All right,
Plan away.
anything else, any other matters?
I got we had a business meeting this past week, and I was just thinking, just for a couple of reasons, trying to increase the Village of Tequesta's vendors that they're utilizing, be Village of Tequesta residents or businesses. And one of the thoughts that came to mind is potentially allowing like a percentage over the low bid option for a local business. You know, like say if the bid comes at within 5% of that low bid, and that person that had that 5%, that's a little bit higher, is a Tequesta business, I would like to have that ability to give that, award that job to that business. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Something to look into. I'm not sure if that's something that we would like to do, or if there's any other options or ideas out there that you can float us, or what, if that's common, not common, I don't know.
There are certain times you can use a local preference, there are certain procurements you're not allowed to use a local preference depending on where the money's flowing from, but we can certainly give some guidance on that.
We'll draft up something that you guys can look at a future workship. So if you give us a, well, you're gonna cancel January, give us a couple months.
And then the other thing was, with the uniqueness of the Village of Tequesta and the businesses that are here, there's definitely not a, I'm gonna call it a corporate feel of, different chains that are here. And it'd be nice to see if we can we regulate chains, no chains in a
Sounds like a workshop.
area? But I think that might be worthwhile looking into, trying to, again, keep Tequesta different and prevent some of the larger chains from potentially coming in.
I know I've looked into that personally
Yeah.
shortly, like earlier this year, but I would be open to that conversation as a group.
Yeah, we can talk about it. I
Must be
think
easy.
there's a lot of issues that without. from a
Potentially,
legal
yeah, let's talk about it,
perspective,
yeah.
But
See
it's
if anybody
certainly
else
something
has
it's certainly something we can look at.
Well, I'd like to see a Chick-fil-A come in town.
Well,
I would too.
So that would be against what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Talk about getting people.
options,
to
have them come, for exceptions, I don't know.
And some franchises are
Yeah.
locally owned, so. Anybody else?
The only other thing that I would add, there's been a lot of chatter on Facebook about the next Tequesta event. I want to call it Tequesta Fest, but it's not anymore, so.
Fall Festival.
Fall Festival. And I think it's really important to, in my opinion, I believe this is a Palm Beach County Commissioner's problem. They're the ones that have the ability to fix this. We don't necessarily have the ability. They are allowed, they've created, they didn't create it, but it's been created, it is what it is. But the state's definitely sees the value of getting rid of those enclaves. And as a result of these enclaves still being here, these are the type of issues that I think are going to continue to happen over and over and over if we've all seen those comments. So I just really think this is a county issue more than a
Well,
West issue.
it's a county issue and it's a state issue, and both Jeremy and I have been speaking with Jack Corey about the whole annexation situation. It's not only, it not only affects us, obviously, it affects other municipalities, and there's some discussion about what steps could be taken, but it's going to, obviously, it's going to go through, at the state level, it's got to go through the legislature.
Yep.
And there was, I know there's been some discussion about, is it even possible to take the county out of the equation? I don't think any, I know there was some proposed legislation, I don't know where that proposal stands, Jeremy, I haven't seen it yet.
They were just tightening up the enclave, changing the definition of enclave. That was really the only legislation that's coming, is to look at the enclave part, and Keith can probably, I don't know if Keith's followed any of that, but.
I'm not familiar with the
But it
current draft.
really would, we have 3 enclaves here in the village of Tequesta. It would expand the number of enclaves. I think it adds 1 or 2 to our potential enclaves, but it doesn't give us any more authority than what we currently have or
Well,
not
the
have.
difficulty is that still requires an interlocal agreement. You
Yes.
still need the political will to sign the interlocal agreement on both sides of the equation.
Correct. But the other thing, we see Parks and Rec as a regional service that we provide for the region. And just like fire service, it is regionalized, and we have a contract with the county to service that ozone incorporators. Why can't we have a contract with the county to do also rec as well? And to allow those types of events so that those residents too have the ability to participate. I would love the idea to at least broach that conversation with somebody if we can.
I'd rather see those residents come in and annex into the village.
Well, Jeremy knows where I stand on that.
That would be preferable.
Because I can't call you guys up because of
I know.
Sunshine Law, but
I
yeah.
know.
I'm not really loving all the pieces to our Fall Fest, but
Okay,
we can talk about that.
I just had
topic.
one thing, and you brought up
I did.
lights outside the fire station. When I did the 3 shifts, that is one of the things that a number of the firefighters brought up, was that, especially in season, when they get ready to roll out that door, we have no lights outside the fire station on Tequesta Drive that give them warning that, hey, we're coming out. And a number of them asked me about the possibility of the council taking a look at perhaps, instituting appropriate lighting and signage there, so that when they're ready to pull out, traffic can stop. So
Do you say
that's something-
signage, or are you talking about a light?
No, they actually want
Yellow
flashing lights.
that
Yeah.
turn red.
So
It'd
that,
almost kind of be cool to have a light on each side of the fire station that would turn red and make them stop.
but that's
Something
something,
nice,
something to look
I've never,
at.
this is the first I've heard of it through you, so, I mean, if staff would bring me something, we'd definitely consider it.
Yeah.
I don't know, I feel like I'm supposed
So
to
I
be
wonder,
under
around for the rest of the council, see if it's something you guys thought might be a good idea.
I can certainly look into it, both signage and lights, and see what we can come up with on that. It would certainly be helpful to get the guys out of the station. And again, we're concerned with everything from bright line creating longer lines to the traffic backing up on Dixie. And as those roads back up, you could see the lines in front of the station just form. So it's a concern as well. So again, I think that.
I wouldn't mind looking at the logistics. It's not all day that road is busy, but there are my moments where I can't even turn to Village Hall, but it's different times of the day.
Yeah, sure.
There's houses right there too. Let's be mindful of something flashing right in front of their window. Just maybe the design of it, we'll have to look at too.
Like crosswalk.
I would encourage staff, if they have those, to take them to their chief, so that way the chief and I can have a conversation, and we can do it. We can look at it.
Yeah, I would be really against anything overhead, I'll say that right now.
I'm
and
right there in their same camp.
Yeah, and I think I'd like to know really if there's ever been big issues getting out of there. I mean, it is a small two-way street. So I'd just like to know if there's actual issues getting out of there. And I think fire trucks, from a cost standpoint, would totally override doing
Yeah,
something like this. So
I can
keep
certainly.
that in mind.
I can certainly look at records. I can tell you if we have delayed response, we end up with a memo. So I don't recall any real recently, but certainly I have noticed the traffic backing up. So I believe there is a little bit of an issue there. I don't know how big that problem is.
I'm just gonna wanna know too, like if we have any road regulations that we have to go up against, cause the ones I'm visualizing that have a light, they either have a median that they have to get over and across, or it has 4 lanes. All the ones I'm trying to figure, even the one I grew up from, there was 4 lanes. So I'm just trying to think if there's a logistical road reasoning why we never even had one.
I honestly don't
So
know.
I don't know if it's gonna,
Hasn't been neat.
I just know that FDOT too, even though that's our road, but I just know we always hit that roadblock when we talk about roads. Well, you can't have them because of this. Can't do this because of this. Let's see what they say.
Take a look at it and see what you come up
I
with.
will take a look at it and bring it back to the manager and go from there.
Anything else this evening?
I know, or not.
A motion to adjourn.
A motion.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.